Good morning. Here we are on Tuesday, the second day of the week, and we're moving through the second day of our journey in Hebrews chapter 11, very often referred to as the faith chapter. Well, I wonder why. Well, maybe it's because the word faith is mentioned verse after verse after verse after verse. In fact, this phrase, by faith, this is confidence in God's promise. It's a confidence. It's a sense of factual matter that we have in our spirit about that which God promises. This is faith. It's a confidence. And in fact, people have a sense of confidence. This sense of faith, everybody has a measure of faith to profit from and profit with. Think of it as the one basic talent that all of humanity is given because they are created by God. They have the ability, they have the necessity, they have the tendency to be able to fill in the blanks by a confidence in that which they believe to be so. All of science operates on faith, a sense of confidence or a sense of testing something to see whether that it is so. So this is not something that's merely religious or something that is ethereal. Everyone in the whole world, doesn't matter their language, doesn't matter where they're located, doesn't matter their gender, doesn't matter. They have a talent that's been put in them by God, and they use it. The question is, do they use it or misuse it? Do they place it or misplace it? That is the question we're resolving. That is the question of paramount importance that we are resolving every day. Who is it that you believe? What is it that you believe? And what are the results and consequences of that confidence, that trust, that hope that moves over into a confidence? Remember, faith, hope, and love, these three remain, but the greatest of these is love. And that is personified in God and in the Christ of God, Jesus. So it is in this divine love, this divine download of love, that it is all consummated. Hope has us look at the future in a positive way. Faith, we operate in a confidence in both the present and the future. Love, when we get into God's presence, never having to leave it again, or never having a sense of diminishment of His presence, or the cloaking of His presence, or looking through a glass darkly. Until then, faith, hope, and love operate, and hope must operate, and faith must operate. Love must operate. And this is all consummated in the person of Jesus, the Christ of God. So I just wanted to remind us of that before we dive in today. And we're going to go a little bit more in this idea of the faith chapter. And here's why it's called the faith chapter, because each one of these statements begin with by faith. And here we go. We got into the era of time in the book of Genesis then, as we closed out yesterday, that would bring us into Enoch. Now we go a couple generations later and we meet somebody by the name of Noah. Noah and the ark. By faith, Noah, when warned about things not yet seen. How about a flood? Not yet ever seen on the earth. Not historical, not cyclical, but something after 1600 years plus of earth history? Nope. How about precipitation and rain? No, never seen that before. By faith, Noah, when warned about things not yet seen. We know that faith is a confidence that the world was formed out of things not seen. Now we move into by faith when warned about things not yet seen. In holy fear, built an ark out of great respect for God. Out of great respect for God. Built an ark to save his family. This was an utter act of foolishness, or an act of utter foolishness. I put the modifier utter on the wrong word. He built an ark to save his family. Totally unnecessary ever before in earth history. By his faith, he condemned the world. It had a two-edged sword. Not only would it save his family, but it condemned the world, because there was an escape for a group of people. There was an escape from the coming flood. He took God at his word. And based on that faith, what did he do? He acted. He didn't simply believe. He didn't say, oh, okay, yeah, I'll mark it on my calendar. Thank you very much. But by his faith, he condemned the world. Why? Because he acted. And he acted to build the ark according to God's instructions. We don't get the detail, but it's interesting that it seems that Noah built according to the detail God showed him. Moses built according to the detail God showed him. Interesting. One built the tabernacle, the other one built an ark that saved his entire family. So by his faith, he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness. Now, heirship means he didn't earn it. It was passed to him. He became heir of the righteousness that is in keeping with faith. He invested himself in faith, and it brought him into right standing with God. Right standing with God. Acting with assurance upon the promises of God brings us into keeping with the righteousness, right standing. To have right standing with God. That does a lot for your conscience. That's good. I know that God is pleased with me. I know that I am a son of God. I know that I have obeyed him completely. I know that he has spoken things to me and I have responded in obedience. What a clean conscience. What a great sense of conscience that brings. The law could never do that. We read about that last week. The law could never make the worshiper's conscience clean. But here was somebody who was tapped into righteousness by faith. And they have a sense of right standing with God. There is nothing better than a sense of right standing with God. By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went. Here's that word again, obeyed and went. So he did something. He didn't build an ark. He journeyed. Even though he did not know where he was going. He had no idea of the culture of the area, what it looked like. It was a whole new world, a bold, exciting point of view, as Aladdin sang to the princess as they rode the magic carpet. I couldn't resist. I can hear that song in the background. A whole new world he was going to. He was given insight by the Lord. He was given a calling by the Lord. And he goes and ventures to a place he had never been before. What does it take to do that? Faith. You believe it and take it in with such confidence that you move into the present and the future in obedience. By faith, he made his home in the promised land like a stranger in a foreign country. He pulled up stakes. He left the area that was familiar and he went to a foreign country, lived like a stranger. He didn't live, what does that mean? He didn't live in the mode of living that was familiar to those people. He didn't live in an apartment. He didn't live in a building. There were buildings all over Egypt. There were buildings all over what would be later Assyria and Babylon. There were cities. In fact, he had come from a well-fortified, organized military city. And what does he do? He leaves and he lives in a tent. That wasn't the custom of the people he was from. They lived in buildings, lived in apartments, lived in organized stone dwellings so they could defend themselves. But he lives like a stranger. He lives in tents. And then Isaac and then Jacob, 3 generations, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise. The same promise. If you look in the book of Genesis and read the story of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, God speaks the promise to Abraham, then he speaks and confirms the same promise to Isaac, then he speaks and confirms the same promise to Jacob before he goes into the land, the Aramean, Paddan Aram. And all of these guys live the same life in Canaan. They live in tents. They're heirs with him of the same promise. So we see 3 generations of consistency coming into the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city whose foundations, whose architect and builder is God. He was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. He was looking for something new, something which did not exist in the land of Canaan. So it had to be something God was going to do. What was he doing? He was looking into the future. He was looking into the heavens. Just as the temple actually had an architect and builder who built it in heaven, we have this city, an entire city with foundations whose architect and builder is God. We get a look at that city scripturally in the 22nd chapter of Revelation. Talk about Johnny come lately. But Abraham was Johnny come way early. He was looking for that city. It was not in the land of Israel. It was not in the land of Canaan. And it would not be built there. Noah built an ark by his own hands according to a pattern. Moses had many people help him and built the tabernacle. Later, Solomon would build the temple. But here, Abraham all along, he was looking forward to the city with foundations whose architect and builder is God. He was not going to find it in what we call the Promised Land or Canaan. He was going to find it only in the completion of everything. And he came to that very early. And by faith, even Sarah, who was past childbearing age, was enabled to bear children because she considered him faithful who had made the promise. She laughed, but she also considered him faithful. This time next year I will come and Sarah will have a son, or she'll be pregnant. I can't remember if he said she'll have a son or she will be pregnant this time next year. Well, her only response was a normal one. Laughter. Nervous laugh. Right. That's ridiculous. I've never been able to be pregnant. And now the whole baby making factory has shut down. Nothing's operating like it should in order to have a baby. You know, that doesn't matter to God. He's looking for somebody to believe his promise. And so from this one man, Abram, later Abraham, and he as good as dead, well past, he was an old guy too. His body had shut down in the reproduction aspect of life. And so from this one man, and he as good as dead, came descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky. Didn't God promise that? Said, see the stars, Abraham? they'll be more numerous. Count the sand on the seashore if you can count it, as countless as the sand on the seashore. Meaning that it's such a large quantity that you just kind of give up counting. You now estimate, because it's just such a vast number. You have to estimate. You have to take square miles and figure out how many people live in that mile, and then do the math. Otherwise, if you're just going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, after a while you stop and you say, I think we need a new way of counting, because this is not suitable at all. This is great for counting fingers and toes and students in a classroom, but this does not work when it starts to number offspring. Or as countless as the sand on the seashore. And what does this all circle around? By faith, by faith, by faith, by faith, by faith. This is what acts and moves within us. And we need to place it in Him, in His promises, in His faithfulness. We need, in one way that we know that we've placed it in Him, we respond, we act, we obey. We leave, we go, we look. It changes our behavior. And then the end result is it puts us in right standing with Him. And nothing can be better than that. So Lord bless you today as you think about that. Meditate upon that. Somewhere in there is a story that's speaking to you about faith. Lord bless you. We'll see you tomorrow. Until then, grace and peace.